Hi, my name is Cameron Four, and I'm an end-user computing technical strategist here at VMware. This video is going to walk you through the latest updates for the Magic Pack for Horizon 2.6.1. It was released basically on August the 8th of this month, so just want to make sure that everyone is aware of some of the new features that we added to it. Now, this particular update is not really a major release because it is just really a .1 release, but it does include some feature enhancements that I think a lot of customers will be interested in. So let me just kind of quickly go through some of these feature enhancements, and we'll demo the features, and we'll talk about how they can kind of benefit you from a Horizon session monitoring and troubleshooting perspective. All right, so looking at the top feature enhancements, you can see that we've added a new capability to do in-guest scripted actions. So basically, when you're trying to troubleshoot a Horizon user, you may see something around along the lines of, hey, they got high CPU, hey, they may have long login times, or they're out of memory, and you may want to take specific actions to learn more information about what's going on with that particular user in their session. So in the demonstration, we'll kind of show you how we're going to go about doing those troubleshooting tips, and then I'll kind of walk you through the workflow, what that looks like. But before I get into that, just want to mention that this is also on my blog. So while I am doing a demo video, the blog will also kind of walk you through the actions themselves. So, in case you can't listen to the video or you just want to be able to read it while you're at work, you'll have the ability to do that as well. So make sure you get that there. The other housekeeping item is, in addition to just providing some feature enhancements, we've also provided links to the release notes. So if you go to the blog and you click on the image here, it'll take you directly to the release notes for the upgraded 2.6.1. Also, if you click on the Manager Pack here, you click on Horizon, it'll take you directly to documentation. So it's just a quick way to see it on my blog, but also navigate directly to the documentation that you're looking for. There's also a link to the marketplace. So the marketplace is where you can download the Manager Pack for Horizon. If you're SaaS hosted, the update will appear for you automatically, so you don't really have to go to Marketplace to download that. But if you're running it on-prem, you can simply come to here, click the link. It will require authentication to download it, but you just kind of sign in with your Marketplace account, and you should be able to download the latest version of the Manager Pack. So with that, I'm going to transition to demo here. All right, so you should be seeing my area operations dashboard. And basically, I'm just going to walk you through the normal troubleshooting flow. So if you haven't seen this in the latest update for both area operations as well as Magic Pack for Horizon, there is a new Horizon card. When you click on that card or tile, whatever you want to call it, you'll get various topics that you can go to. Now, all of these are really just direct links to dashboards by topic. So if you're trying to look for a good overview dashboard for your Horizon deployment, or you're trying to do connection server troubleshooting, user performance troubleshooting, all of these dashboards are available. Now, for a user troubleshooting workflow, I'm going to walk you through how I recommend going about it, but there's also various ways you could go find a user, find their session, and troubleshoot it. So at the very top, you just click the search bar and you'll type in the user's login information. So here I'm typing in C4 because that will be my login information for our test drive environment. And you'll notice that you'll have both session objects as well as user objects to select from. Now, we do both for very specific reasons. So a desktop session object will take you to the very specific pool the user's logged into. And this can vary depending on how you've architected your Horizon deployment. For example, if you're using something like Cloud Pod architecture, you could have two Windows 10 pools, one for site A and one for site B, and you could potentially see both session objects if the user's connected to both objects. So by having the user object, we have the ability to aggregate every session that the user may connect to, all rolled up into a single object. So I kind of recommend starting here. It's not a requirement. If you only have one session object that you see, you can directly go to it that way. So there's no hard and fast rule there. But just for this particular demo, I'm going to start with the user object. So once the user object loads, you'll see all of the sessions that the user is connected to, whether they're connected or disconnected, and which ones they could be having a performance problem with. Now in this environment, none of these sessions have performance issues. As you can see, they're all green, they're all really high scores, but I am going to choose one for this particular demo. So I'm going to click on our discovery pool, and when you click on that, it's going to take me into that specific session so I can start my troubleshooting. So usually some of the topics that you may run into when you're trying to troubleshoot a user sessions, it may be you see that their performance is low, but you're not sure why, right? You come here and you see maybe their protocol score is high, but their data center score is low. Now that's not really true in this case, but just kind of work with me here. But so if protocol is low, that usually means that their connectivity to the desktop is not ideal. So their blast, latency, protocol, and packet loss may be impacting their experience and their connectivity to their desktop. So that's really what this protocol score is measuring. It's really just an overall performance score for how well they're connected, how well their protocol is performing, and if they have any issues with the network in between their client and their desktop. Now, the data center KPI is really a roll-up of all of the metrics that you see here in terms of various, not only VM statistics, so VM statistics will be things like VM CPU utilization, CPU ready time, co-stop, CPU I/O wait. Those are all VM level statistics. But we also have some in-guest statistics such as CPU run queue, page-in rate for memory, and you might see things like outstanding I/O, for example. So we kind of use all of these metrics to kind of calculate their overall data center performance score. But if one of these is kind of showing at a very high rate or a number that we expect to be poor or potentially providing poor performance for the user, we will color code them for you. So if you see yellow, orange, red, that kind of indicates that, hey, this is a metric of importance. It could be causing performance issues depending on which metric it is and really the context of the experience or performance problem the user is having. So with that, at the very top, you'll also see some metrics around things like login times. So login times is usually one of those metrics where, we can definitely show you the login times. It's always been there from a feature aspect. But if you're having long login times, the next question is, okay, well, why is it long? So that's always really been a challenge for us to kind of show additional value and kind of going through their login events and really determining all of the areas of where login performance can be hindered. So what we've added, so if you look under actions here, you'll notice that there are 4 new actions on the session object. So these actions aren't available on the user object. They only are available on this specific VDI session that the user is connected to in a very specific pool. So from here, you can kind of see the actions that you can take. So one of them is get processes. Now, why would you use that? So if you come in here and you see that, hey, I see CPU is running at 95%. Now it's not doing that, of course, in my case. But if it was running really hot or high, your next question might be, okay, well, what's driving that? Is Chrome running at 90%, or are there various processes consuming all the CPU? Running get top processes will allow me to see what those processes are that are running. Again, it's going to look at the top ones, the top 10 to be in fact, and it will show you which ones are consuming the most CPU time. And the same would be true for memory. So if you came in and say that, hey, the user's out of memory, why? What processes are really consuming all of the available memory for that desktop? So those are really the typical use cases that customers are looking for. IOPS could be another one, right? So if you come in here and say, hey, my IOPS are running at, let's say, like 5,000 IOs per second, well, that's a lot. That's not very common for most users. Again, this particular script, once you run it, it will allow us to query the guest OS. It'll go through and look at all the processes, organize them, and kind of show you the results of what's going on. So let's see how this works. So if you click Get Top Processes, here you need to provide admin level credentials. So this is typically your domain account that has, again, the rights to be able to run and execute scripts within the guest OS. So here I'm providing my username. I will provide my password and hopefully type it correctly, and then I'll click Begin Action. Now, once the action, you click Begin Action, you should see a link to the task ID. So this is basically going to be your way to track the progress of that script and its action. So I'm just going to simply click that, and you'll notice that the script is in an in-progress status. So it is running. It means it's been sent to the virtual desktop. And basically at this point, we're waiting for it to finish executing and for results to be posted back to VROP. So I know that the previous screen said it could take up to 5 minutes. Typically, it doesn't take that long. It really just depends on how busy your system is. Usually, I find that depending on the script that you're running, it could take up to 30 seconds to a minute. Really, the longest one that I'm aware of is the logon time analysis, which we'll get to in a minute. But for the most part, they're not too long here. So you can click the refresh button here just to click it to see if it's been upgraded, and this will kind of refresh the screen faster. But really at this point, we're just kind of waiting. So we're waiting for it to go from in progress to completed. Now that it shows completed, again, I don't know exactly how long that took. It looks like it took maybe about a minute, give or take. We're going to just simply click the back arrow so it takes us directly back to the session we were on, so we don't have to, navigate through the menus and go to it or search for it again. We'll just simply go back. Now, when you scroll down to the user summary page, you'll notice that there's a new VM scripted actions results widget, and this is where the results of your executed task should appear. So if you don't see it for some reason, and again, browsers are funny, they don't always refresh pages correctly as we want them to. I find that if you just kind of simply click onto another object and load it back, it'll basically force the browser to reload the whole session. Shouldn't have to do that, but I've just noticed that's one UI trick that I've noticed. So here we should see our results list now. We can see that get tile processes has been executed, and you can see the processes the result here. Now you can also expand this, so if you're not you don't want to scroll or go through them, you could expand the widget, it'll blow it up, and then you can kind of determine, okay, well, here you can kind of see which processes are consuming the most CPU time, the most memory, and the highest I/O rate. Now, just for an example here, we see one called Office Click to Run that really shouldn't be running, but we also notice its process ID is 3944. So the next use case might be, okay, well, you see that Office is running hot and you want to terminate it as part of your troubleshooting step to see if that helps the user and alleviate their performance bottleneck. So here you would come back to actions, kill specific process. You're going to put in the process ID. Oop, that's not the process ID. That number was, where are you? 3944. Okay. So let me get rid of that. So here, okay. Make sure you type it in correctly because we're going to kill whichever process you specify. If there's no process match, of course, the script will, terminate gracefully and let you know that no process ID was found that have that particular ID. Or if it were to fail for some other reason, you would see that as well. So here we'll type in my username. And we'll type in my admin credentials. And we'll click begin action. And just like before, we'll get a task ID. So I can go follow that task. I can see that it's in the starting phase. Starting should then go to in progress. That usually means that it's executing within the guest OS and we're just waiting for a response back. So again, we'll give it about a minute. It hasn't been quite that long just yet. Still waiting. And now completed. So that one actually completed relatively quickly. So, within a minute time frame. I don't know the exact time in seconds because I didn't measure it. But now we'll just click the back button and we'll go back to the session page. We'll scroll down and we should see our kill specific processes that have been added to the list. And here you see a notification letting us know that the process Office Click to Run with ID 3944 has been terminated. So that basically walks you through the troubleshooting scenario of, hey, users having poor data center performance that you've noticed, or they're calling in and complaining about issues. Maybe CPU is running hot, maybe they're out of memory or high disk I/O, and you just wanted to kill that process that was causing the issue. So from there, we're going to troubleshoot a different scenario. So let's look at things like login time. So again, login times we've been collecting for a while. You can go back and look historically, let's go 7 days. So here you can kind of see that my login time kind of varies between 93 seconds and, well, the low dips here, those are just reconnect. So those are always going to be really fast. But some on the lower end around 81 seconds. But maybe we will understand why. So why does it take 86 seconds to complete a login task? So for this is what we're going to use the login time analysis action for. So the trick here is that you have two steps. Unlike the other one where you just provide your admin credentials, here the script needs the actual domain name that we're going to be running the analysis against. So for this particular use case, again, it's still my account, so that's why my username appears here. But if it's a different user, you want to make sure it's whatever user's listed up here at the top. That's the actual count that we want to specify here, and it needs to match. Same thing with your credentials. So you want to make sure you type in your credentials correctly, because if you don't, when the script executes, you'll see an error and something about no authentication. That's basically what I've noticed. But you do get a clean error, basically letting you know that it failed from an authentication perspective. So now we'll click begin action, and again, just like before, we'll get a task ID, and now we wait for this to process. Now, I expect this one to take a little bit longer, just because just the way that it works. I mean, it's going through all of the Windows events related to login tasks, like processing GPOs, processing Dynamic Environment Manager, app volumes. It's looking for all of those events and the time it takes to execute them. And that just takes a little bit longer for not only the script to run, but also the OS to process the events and bring something back. So here we see it looks like it started at 2:25. Give it about a minute. And hopefully it completes successfully and I didn't do anything wrong there. Okay, so still sub-minute, so not too bad. We'll click back, go back to the session. We'll scroll down a little bit. Again, this is where I expect to see the results, login time analysis. And as long as I see something that says auditing of process creation was a success, that's a good start. If you see a bunch of other stuff that looks like it's an error, and then you get a error message stating that you have incorrect credentials, that's usually good feedback there. All right, so let's expand this because that's way too small. And again, we're going to look at the overall results and what's really happening here. So here you can see the username that we ran the result for, and we see just various information like, hey, is loop back processing enabled? What broker did we come through? What's the client name? What protocol are we using? And here we can see the overall duration login time. So one thing I'll put out is that this login time is purely from the Windows perspective. This does not include brokering. So brokering time is additional to that. So that's why on the previous screen, I don't remember the exact number, but it was in the 80 seconds, right? So it's a little bit higher than what you'll see here, but that's okay because what we're really trying to do is understand from a Windows Active Directory or service perspective, what's impacting these users. So here we can see the various sources of login time. So app volumes, how long did that take? That added 9.2 seconds. The user profile was around 1.7. Group policy processing time was 1.8. Importing the dim path was, wow, it was 20 seconds for that particular load. So if you have slowness on your whatever file share or your array there, that could be leading indication that hey, there's some time that needs to be improved. Then you see app volume shell start, that was 0 processing seconds, and then other AppX packages. So even the AppX packages took roughly 36 seconds of processing time. So quite a bit of time there in terms of where we can go and improve that process. If I were to kind of provide some advice here, I'd mostly look on can we improve the dim path import time? Is that really the best performance we're going to get? As well as looking at disabling some of these AppX packages that probably don't need to be loading. And then if you scroll underneath, you'll see the packages that it was loading and how much time it took. So part of the issue here, if you look, it's not really like there's a lot of time in general for a particular one per se, but there is a lot of them. So it might be one of those scenarios where you decide to disable some of these features just to kind of gain some additional efficiency in login times. Now in terms of group policy, it says asynchronous scripts were processed in 0.3 seconds. Here's some various scheduled tasks that had to be executed as part of login, and that added to some of the time. And here's some group policy client-side extension processing and what the time was for that. So thankfully, we're not really seeing any problems with the group policies being loaded here or anything along those lines. The other thing I would just mention here is, like, depending on what services you have, let's say if you don't have Dynamic Advantage or you don't have app volumes, you're not going to get times for those, right? So don't expect times for things that you don't have. Only the relative services that are available are you going to get processing times for. So, but that's it in a nutshell, right? So again, the goal here is to provide much more meaningful information on troubleshooting login times for users, so where customers are always struggling around this particular topic, and we want to make sure we provide much more meaningful results and helping them figure out how can they improve login times for their users. All right, so after that we have Traceroute. Okay, so Traceroute's another helpful feature where you're trying to look at what's the network performance, packet loss, latency between the virtual desktop that the user is on and whatever network target that you want to answer the question to. Now, by default, you'll notice an IP was already provided. Now, this is actually the IP address of the client. And depending on your network architecture and where the user is coming from, maybe they're on the home network, maybe they're on an internal LAN network, this IP may not be relevant to you. However, you will have additional IPs you can ping. You can ping the security gateway address. You can ping the furthest most internal router that the user would come through. And the reason you would do that is just so you can kind of get a sense for, how much what's the actual latency between that specific desktop and its virtual network and your furthest gateway in your environment, so you could determine, are there any issues with any hops within your network that you need to troubleshoot. So just like before, we need to provide admin credentials, which I will do again. Need to type it correctly. Again, if you mess up, it will just force you to do it again. Now, in this case, the client, my IP is not relevant, so I'm actually going to pick like a Google DNS address, just so it actually traverses our whole network, goes outside, and will kind of tell me, how much overhead we have, and we can kind of follow that. So again, task ID, it's starting. The next step will be in progress. Okay, so now it's processing the script. It's sent it to the virtual machine. We're now waiting for a response. Hopefully it stays around 30 seconds to a minute. So I'll just kind of keep hitting refresh until it shows it's completed. Still working. And I guess this one could take a little time as well, because it does have to ping through all the IPs that I provided it. So maybe it didn't make sense to go as far as I did, but hey, add a little bit of time. So still about a minute. Okay. So now that that's completed, we'll go back to the session. And thankfully I haven't had to do anything else other than hit back for these. So there's the trace route, and you can kind of see the results. So again, this is going to go from the IP of the virtual machine, like it's through its gateway. It's going to go through all the virtual networks until it gets outside. Eventually, it's going to tell you how much time it goes through all those hops. So here you can see it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So roughly, 7 to 8 milliseconds just for internal networking, right? So that's actually quite a bit. And then once you get outside, it's not too many hops to get to DNS, but to Google. But then you can see the trace is complete. So again, just a helpful way to help you quickly determine, is there any issue on your internal network, or if you have the external WAN address that the user's connected through, you could even try using that as a trace route. That's also very helpful. But again, just a great way to add additional troubleshooting steps around the VDI session. So hopefully you find that these new feature enhancements are very useful. I've been trying to get these into the product for quite some time. I think they'll add a lot of value, particularly the login time analysis. I probably already had 3 or 4 calls this week just about login times and how do we improve them. Because again, we display the time, but how do we show the customers that this is a specific area of processing that's really slowing down login time. So. The get dip top processes, that's helpful as well. Again, technically you could have done that before, but you'd have had to have known to go to the virtual machine object. So I guess the other enhancement is to provide similar actions directly on the session object without having to know to navigate to the virtual machine. So just trying to improve that user experience there. So again, hopefully this demo was helpful. If you have any questions, we can always do another follow-up demonstration, but again, hopefully this provides some value in understanding what we can do with the latest Magic Pack for Horizon 2.6.1. Again, just a quick plug-in for my blog here. There is a very similar scripted blog here that kind of walks through the exact same flow that I just showed you. So if you need to send this to someone else and they need to get more information, that's there as well. Okay, well, thank you very much for your time, and I hope you enjoyed the new features. Thank you.